I want to earn this.
Yeah.
I don't want to be given anything.
Right.
You know?
I don't know why people aren't willing to give you that opportunity. I find that annoying.
It's a really funny put down of like, you'll never be your dad. And when it's like, no, I'm not, and nobody else ever will be. I would rather make my own name, unfortunately, when I have the name Van Halen. It's a bit tough to do.
All right, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It's our first time meeting.
Yeah.
I'm glad to cross paths with you.
Likewise.
So, I'm doing my typical research. March 16th, 1991. On March 17th, 1967, fellow Pisces.
My wife is the day before me as well, so.
They say if you can couple with your same sign, that's the best relationship you can have.
Well, I guess they're right, because it is.
You better say that right here.
Absolutely.
Recently married. Congratulations on being married. I think that's awesome. As you know, or you're learning, success and love at the same time is super valuable.
Absolutely. It's nice to have somebody that you can, trust.
It gets a little complicated at times to figure out, right?
I've had a lot happen in my life in the last, 6 years. So
I haven't heard any about that. Maybe we can poke around on it.
Yeah. So
yeah, you have.
It's nice to have somebody I can just kind of trauma dump, I guess, to a certain extent, but also share it with.
When I was in you're how old now? 30?
I'm 33.
33. There's a lot of the years of my life where there was all these incredible things going on musically, but because I didn't really have something to come home to, doesn't mean I didn't have a relationship, but it wasn't anything I look forward to.
Yeah.
It's like a black hole in my mind.
Totally.
It's like this gig, and then it's like blank.
To the next one.
Yeah, because it when you find that work-life balance, it's super valuable. And I found it really late in life. I mean, I'm 57, and it's like no one's more shocked than me that I'm in a happy marriage and have children, and so I wish all those things for you.
Thank you very much.
So everybody in the world wants to talk to you about your pop, and I promised you we weren't going to talk.
I'm used to it, though.
No, but here's the thing.
I would be happy to talk about him with you because you've actually interviewed him before, so.
Thank you. I did have that honor. But my point is when I texted you, thanks to our mutual friend Ross Halfin, I really want this interview to be about you.
He stressed that as well, so he
great,
was very
great.
clear
No,
about
because I listen. We deal in a world where it's clickbait and low hanging fruit, and if you'll trust me is not the right word. If you let me kind of get there, I think you'll understand why I'm talking about the things I'm talking about. It's just letting you know, as we say in wrestling, I'm not swerving you.
You got it.
So here I am in about 97. I'm at 5150 with your father. Sammy's recently left the band. Guitar World, who the interview was with, I pitched them. I said, I want to interview Eddie. And they were like, why? And I said, because he's one of the greatest musicians in the world. And I feel that Van Halen isn't really getting its respect from the alternative world. Van Halen really stands outside a lot of these other bands that got swept aside in the grunge era. I know you know your grunge world music, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I really want to introduce Van Halen and Eddie to an audience that maybe wouldn't understand why Van Halen is so valuable to the alternative community.
Or just guitar players in general.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. I mean, come on, everybody.
Yeah.
So I think it was Brad Talinsky was the editor of the time. He was so nervous about the interview, he flew out to make sure I didn't ask your father any of the wrong questions. And your father was amazing with me. And I have this memory, and it came back to me today because I was listening a lot of your music in prep for the interview.
Wow.
And, there's a kind of beautiful high readiness to your voice. Like you have a lead singer voice, you know what I mean?
Thank you very much.
And as your father felt more and more comfortable with me through the interview, and I'll tell you how I think he got comfortable, because I didn't get the feeling he was sitting around listening to Smashing Pumpkins, which was okay. I was just honored to be there and interviewing with him. And you know how your dad was, a cigarette and a guitar, and so. And I'm chasing around. But at some point he said, play something? Sure. He goes, and he kind of does the thing. But before you hear it, it's me singing. Now, I've heard your father sing 8,000 times, but always in harmony.
Not a lot of people realize that the tone of the Van Halen harmonies is very much half him.
Okay, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because you hear Michael at the
Oh
top.
yeah, he's Mike's incredible, but you don't realize the other half of that.
Okay,
Very much.
So
tone.
I had this, and I'm getting chills thinking about it because Van Halen, come on. So he plays me this song, and I I listen to it, and he wants to know what I think. And I go, well, first of all, you have an alternative voice. He's like, what does that mean? And I go, you sound like somebody who'd be in a grunge band. He has a cool voice. It's like, it was shocking. And I was like, wow, your voice is cool. Like, why don't you sing more? Guitar, The other moment, and this is where I think he became comfortable with me and why he was willing to play me some of these things, was, he's playing, you know better than anybody. He'd sit there and just play, and you sit there like, how the hell is he? It's shocking. I saw your dad back in the day, 84.
Yeah.
Last tour with the original lineup. I sat there and studied it all like every other nerd. But when you're like this, as far away as you are, and he's playing, you're like, holy mother of God, how do you play like that?
Yeah.
And as he's talking, and he's smoking, and he's taking jokes, and you're like...
Second nature, yeah.
Okay, so he does this. He goes, you play, right? And I go, yeah. He goes, play. And he hands me that guitar or whatever.
Nothing worse than being a musician and somebody say, you play, right?
No. All due respect, he's your dad. Eddie Van Halen, hey, play the guitar. Let me see what you got. So I'm like, holy, what am I going to play him? And I'm not going to play Van Halen.
Yeah.
So I just I got nothing to lose. So I just started playing. And he goes, you can play. I think he thought I was just some alternative creep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So after he saw that I could play the guitar, the conversation went totally different after that.
You a bit more.
And then we were talking about music and amps. And so he really opened up. And I think that's what led to him playing that song. But as it pertains to you, hearing you sing, it's like today listening, it was like, oh yeah, that's that connection. I remember that voice. And I think, obviously there's a lot of focus on your guitar playing and your music, but I think what's really getting lost in is you're a very good lead singer.
That's very kind, man.
Because you sound to me like somebody who, not everybody can just be a good lead singer. Is that something you practice? It came naturally? I'm sort of curious.
I have no idea. I've always been able to sing, but when it came to Mammoth and its inception, I was not sure if I could do it. I wanted to,
right?
But it took my producer Elvis Basquet to really push me. He's like, I can hear it. I know you can do it.
Wow.
We just need to figure it out. And that's why I think doing that first album took like 3 years of just kind of recording on and off to figure out who I was. And I eventually found it. But I think coming back to the second album after touring for a year is where I really found it, I think. Just kind of being on the road and doing it. You learn how
you're a very credible lead singer, you know what I mean? And as somebody who plays guitar and sings for a living, it's not something that just happens.
No, it's a lot of...
Yeah, it's a lot of
same time,
R&D is the old word, research and development. Part of your narrative at this point in your life, and before I say this, because I think it's important, I think your future is so exciting because you're at the perfect age, maybe a little later than most people would have started.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little late almost.
I don't think so.
I wish I was 23 instead of 30.
Sure. And I wish I was 23 too. But my point is, in the new world, you got to remember, the world I grew up in, 50 was like, you're done. Even they would ask the Stones, like, you're done, right? And here we are, and they're in their 80s.
Still doing it.
So it's not unreasonable to think that if you want, you have 30 plus years if you want it. So this kind of hyperbolic venting that goes on around you, I find really kind of creepy. You know what I mean? Because, I've known children famous people. Lisa Marie Presley was a close friend of mine, and there's other people I don't want to talk about, but Lisa in particular, I helped Lisa at one point. She was recording, and she had an amazing voice. She had that Elvis kind of, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like genetics, right? It's like, hello. And, she had her father's good looks and all that stuff. And it was really, really hard for her to escape the shadow of Elvis,
And the individuality.
Hello. I mean, it's Elvis, and she looked like Elvis. So my point of saying this to you is I'm absolutely convinced that if your father, by the way, as a guitar player, your father casts a shadow on all of us. I remember being in my bedroom at 16 going, I can't play I'm on Fire, but I'm going to try, right?
Yeah.
With Michael hitting that.
Very high.
God bless him.
Yeah.
It's all sense memories, right? If people aren't convinced that you are going to step out of that long shadow, I'm convinced that you will.
That's very kind.
And it would be, it's a little bit dread, be like, you're out of the shadow. No, musical geniuses cast a big shadow. The fact that he's your father is certainly part of your story, but we live in the music business, okay? Anybody who picks up a guitar, it's like, well, are you as good as Zakk Wylde or Randy Rhoads or Jakey Lee or...
It's a tough thing about like, are you as good as? Because like...
I got to tell you a funny story, but keep going.
Yeah, like you don't need to be the best to write something that can resonate with somebody. I feel
think
like anytime anytime a video of me goes viral of me doing a solo or something, there's always people going like, single hand tapping, and it's like, I'm not trying to do something complicated. I'm just doing something that I enjoy that I think sounds good.
Well, let's give some information for the nerds. I'm going to give it from my perspective. I did see, because I think it sort of dovetails into it, the song "I'm All Right." Now, whether it's true or not, I saw where something about you were reacting to people's kind of constant negativity. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think maybe that song, if more compared to any other Mammoth song, is certainly a criticism of people's sort of plan they have for me without taking my feelings into consideration.
Don't you think it's kind of weird that people expect you to sound like Van Halen?
Yeah, they want me to either sound like Van Halen
or play Van Halen.
They want me to play Van Halen. They want me to be like my dad, but if I was, I'm riding coattails, but I'm not, but I am. And
well,
it's
it's a setup.
Yeah.
It's a setup.
Yeah.
So as long as you know it's a setup.
I'm just doing what makes me happy. And,
do you know, the great country singer Hank Williams?
Mm-hmm.
So Hank Williams Jr.,
yeah.
Well, Hank Williams died when Hank Jr. was very young. The mother pushed him on a stage at 8 years old and had him singing Hank Williams songs because they needed the money, quite frankly. And Hank Williams at some point was like, to hell with this. And he busted out and was like, I'm going to do my own music. Was heavily criticized. You ain't your daddy. Mm-hmm. Hank Williams, Country Music Hall of Fame, one of the most influential musicians of all time in any genre. So I don't know why people aren't willing to give you that opportunity. I find that annoying.
It's a really funny put down of like, you'll never be your dad. And when it's like, no, I'm not. And nobody else ever will be. I'm not trying.
Well, start here.
Nobody,
and it's been a good, Van Halen 1 came out in 77. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, nobody's topped your father. Okay, so start there, right? You know what I'm saying? So to put that on you, like somehow it's your cross to bear, I find that really weird.
Yeah, that I'm not legitimate unless I rise above that in some way. And it's
that's so weird to me.
Yeah, I feel like if people actually...
If a basketball player's dad won 5 championships and the son won 2, does it mean the son wasn't...
He'll never be his dad.
That's kind of weird.
It is. We're all different people, and I'm doing something completely different.
Yeah.
Like, my dad couldn't, record every single instrument to the level I am on Mammoth,
Yeah.
He would tell you that. He loved it. He was so proud of it. He knew the first...
I knew your dad a little bit, I used to send faxes to your house, and I know he read them. He just wouldn't respond, but I know he read them. I would just send him nice notes, basically like, I admire you and I hope you're well.
That's awesome.
faxes. That's how long ago it was.
We still have that machine up at the studio. It's still
Okay,
there.
you know the fax machine
Yeah.
I'm talking about. It's like, you want to communicate with me, write me a fax. I'm doing a bad impression of your dad, but it's always the cigarette.
Yeah.
But like I said, I know your dad a little bit, spent some good time with him here and there. And he even honored me at one point coming to one of my shows. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. It was a real honor to see him in the audience. I don't get the feeling he would want you to be him.
No, he never did.
Right?
He enjoyed playing with me. That was one of his favorite things, and it was a big reason why the years of Van Halen where I was involved happened at all.
Yeah,
You know?
and you started in Van Halen when you were 15, right? Is that the right number?
Yeah.
Okay. He obviously trusted you. He put you in arenas full of people.
Well, it wasn't just him, too. It was Al. It was everybody. It was Roth at the time.
Yeah.
You know, it was the whole crew. They all trusted me. It wasn't just...
That's a big organization.
Yeah, you know, and I know how ridiculous it sounds to trust a 15-year-old to do that, but I wouldn't have been there had they not known I was capable.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that your father was proud of you, he trusted you, he believed in you, and he encouraged you to chase your own musical dream. So I don't understand what people don't understand about that. I don't want to talk about that, but contextually, I think everything we talk about is me sort of putting it in the light of like, I think it's time that the story turns over to like, what's Wolf going to do with his life? And then maybe you agree with me, maybe you wouldn't. It's like, okay, when all's said and done, will you look at what I've created and will you say, he did his best? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think there's a lot of pride involved too, I think, because when I did the Taylor Hawkins tribute, where I played those two Van Halen songs for Taylor and for my dad, it was a big moment for me because it was, one, proving that I could do it, and two, showing that I choose not to. And I think that...
Can you explain the choose not to bit?
I think my dad actually had a quote when they ended up doing a lot of cover songs. It was on Diver Down. There was a lot specifically in that album. And he said, I'd rather bomb with my own material than succeed with someone else's.
Right.
And I feel very much that way. Like I could very easily shack up and do, you know, Wolf does Van Halen and do that and probably make a decent living at it.
Yeah.
But that's
why Hank Jr. came to mind.
It's
like a weird expectation.
It's very hollow and astoundingly creatively unfulfilling. So I feel like it's kind of selling out. And I could never do that. That's not satisfying to me. I would rather bomb on my own than succeed with what my dad laid before me.
Yeah. And I was trying to think of other rock progeny, and you're one of the only ones that I can think of that's actually been successful. I mean, I'm sure there are, but most don't get out, and you have. So why are we still, and I'm collective the we, why are we still talking about this? And I am talking about it, but I'm frustrated maybe on your behalf, and I don't know you, but as somebody who's a fan and somebody who loved your father, I'm not saying I'm trying to defend it for him, but it's just annoying.
Well, it's a funny thing when you see the people who are the strongest Van Halen fans outwardly acting in a way that my dad would be disgusted with, and they don't see that.
Well,
you know?
Let me tell you a story that might make you laugh. So I went solo. I had a band that broke. After Pumpkins broke up, I had a band for a hot second, and then I went solo. So I'm touring. You know, I'm in Belgium with my weird solo project. It's all electronic, and I'm acting all weird. And people are screaming at me to play Pumpkin songs. And I said in the press, I'm not going to play Pumpkin songs. And I remember I was in Belgium. It's this weird old venue in Ghent, Ghent. And you know, sometimes the awkward silence between songs. And I heard a guy with like a Belgian accent. Why can't you play Pumpkin? You know what I mean? And I just went in the mic because I don't want to. You know, like, and that's me. That's people chasing me down with my own music.
It's a very weird disconnect that I think in a way that, and it's a very hotly debated topic to this day that I think as a consumer, they think they own you to a certain extent.
Why do you think that is? Because I'm saying I understand because I've experienced it my own.
I don't know. It's their choice to spend their own money on an album, but at that point, the transaction is over. They don't own you, and you're not. It's a very weird thing, and I don't know how to quantify it or explain it. But I think it's an artist's full right to do what they want.
Yeah,
and that. You have a choice to buy the album. You have a choice to go see the concert, but you don't own them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've got it sometimes in airports. Like, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't live in a big house. And I was like, no, actually, I still would. Sorry. Sorry, bro. I'm good.
It's a very weird, the what's the word I'm looking for? Just the entitlement is
yeah.
I don't understand it.
As social media is,
has poisoned it 1,000-fold over the last 15 years.
Yeah. Let's talk about you. So, and I hope you understand why I wanted to contextualize that.
Of course.
Okay, cool. What was it that you were listening to as a kid that you were like, that, made you want to pick up a guitar, like, made you want to be a musician?
It's a funny thing. I started on drums. And so
I want to talk about that too, but go ahead, please.
Yeah. A big thing I bonded over with my dad was AC/DC. And
interesting. Did he like AC/DC?
Yeah. AC/DC, he really liked Tori Amos. And his favorite album of all time, along with one of my favorite albums, is So by Peter Gabriel.
Okay.
So he had a very eclectic taste, but AC/DC is something. I remember he showed me the song Big Balls when I was when we were on a road
father-son story.
We were on a road trip, and I loved it so much. I loved Bon Scott's voice, and I was enamored with Malcolm Young's rhythm, guitar, aggression.
Amazing.
Yeah, one of the best.
That's definitely the secret sauce in AC/DC.
Absolutely.
Malcolm.
What really set me out on, like, individually finding what pushed me to be a better musician was Blink-182. I got Enema of the State, and learning how to play Travis Barker's drum parts on it is what...
Yeah. Travis is a very cool drummer.
Yeah, he's really, really good. And I think from there, I didn't find a level up until I started listening to Tool and trying to learn Danny Carey's parts.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. And, but when it came to, like, guitar and stuff, I mean, it was really everything.
I guess I'm more interested in song.
Yeah, song-wise, it was...
Like who in your mind was like, I wish I could write songs like that,
Trent Reznor.
Okay.
Dave Grohl. I think Alice in Chains was another big one for me.
Yeah, Jerry's such an amazing writer.
Yeah. And I think those, another big band for me growing up was Jimmy Eat World. I think they get unfairly pigeonholed into a one-hit wonder sort of thing with the middle, when I think they are a very unique band that I really love. But yeah, it just, the respect for the song more than anything, rather than, doing a wank-off solo here.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that in your music. Your songs are very strong.
Yeah, thank you. I have a more respect for, does this serve the song or not?
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's okay. I'm recording right now, and there are many moments in it where I was like, I could do this, but I'd rather just focus on the groove. Sometimes simplifying things are what makes it heavier. It seems and more impactful.
I feel like I can kind of see where you're going, but you got to tell me, but I feel like you're still putting together certain elemental things. It's strong, don't get me wrong, but I can kind of hear you're still reaching for things that you don't quite have in our band, we call it languaging. It's like you develop your own language of it.
Yeah, I think I'm having fun finding these different, expanding the sound and finding where the limits are.
Sure.
I think the first album was very much a comfy rock album. And when it came to the second one, I was itching more to do some, you focus on more virtuoso-esque things, like some more solo moments on guitar now that I was comfortable.
Yeah.
And even some, syncopated double kick stuff, like on the song Right on that second album. And now that I think I've gotten that out of my system, I'm having fun really focusing on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I didn't know that. I think I knew somewhere in the back of my brain that you played everything on your records. But when I sort of saw that you started on drums, it was like, oh, your guitar playing made more sense to me.
Rhythmic.
A lot of polyrhythmic stuff. And then, of course, what people skip past is, your uncle's Alex Van Halen, who's a phenomenal drummer.
I think if
So you've got these two familial influences, right?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is it put pieces together for me, like, because everyone obviously goes to one side of the room with your dad.
Mm.
But, that polyrhythmic thing that's in a lot of your uncle and dad's music and yours is like, it's a cool, different take on it. I don't know how to put it. I'm not saying it's the family brand, but it put pieces together for me in your music. Because the first thing I heard when I heard your first record was there was some good riffing. But like, if you think of like Jerry Cantrell, he plays certain tonalities, certain riffs, and you go, that's Jerry Cantrell.
Yeah.
And I think you've developed the thing that's like, I know it's you now.
Yeah, I'm starting to find out what those are. Like,
yeah, it's cool.
I'm realizing I do use a lot of like major chord inflections and a lot of, God, what's the word? I can't even.
Nerd.
Yeah,
nerd stuff.
But
yeah.
A lot of chromatic.
Yeah. Yeah, like do. Like a lot of stuff.
Chromatic major is kind of where my comfy.
Have you listened to Gershwin at all? I would highly recommend listening to Gershwin.
Will do.
Gershwin's the master at major I diatonic passing chords. It just blow your mind. You
Awesome.
got to go deep into Gershwin.
Will do.
I don't know what your musical tastes are outside of rock, but he's like the supreme master. Like, everyone goes to Rhapsody in Blue because it's this pivotal moment in music. Mm-hmm. But you go deep into Gershwin's songwriting, which is, I think, why so many jazz musicians like to play over Gershwin.
For sure.
There's always this beautiful tone poem stuff going on in between chords. And that's what most rock guys miss is A, G, E. It's all the little notes that's sort of the personality part of it. I also want to praise you in that I really like that we call it going to ground. Like, you're out there working. You're touring. You're building up an audience the old-fashioned way. Like, I'm here to play. I got a good band. I watched some live clips of you today. Band sounds great. You sound great.
Thank you.
You know what I mean?
I've been hitting it hard. This year is probably one of the busiest years of my life,
That's what I mean. It's like you're out there working,
Yeah.
And, you grew up in L.A. You could be sitting somewhere, staring at a sunset. I mean, it's grueling. You're married now.
I want to work, though. I want to earn this.
Yeah.
I don't want to be given anything.
Right. There's not an ounce of entitlement in you. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like the musician in me is like, okay, he's working. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to defend you. I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
I do think it's, I could just as easily be some up with a coke problem on a yacht, living off of my dad's name. But
you could do that.
That's an option, but that's not.
Unfortunately, that's the majority out here.
That's a whole lot of people in my position.
How many people with famous parents that are like they're never going to do shit?
Yeah.
Because they don't want to work or they don't want to deal with adversity.
Mm-hmm. And I would rather make my own name, unfortunately, when I have the name Van Halen. It's tough to do.
I'm saying this is a family thing, so you take it however you want. Who in your family gives you this sort of resolve to not to fight, but to be strong in what you're doing?
I mean, my dad certainly did. He's the one who raised me to be an independent musician and person, as well as my mother, and I think I'm really glad I didn't pigeonhole myself as a musician into just trying to recreate what my dad does. And it's like, while I could do that, and to a certain extent it's in me, I take a different approach with it, and I'm very glad.
Because your mom obviously has a very interesting front row seat, you know what I mean? What's her take on that vibe?
She's just very proud. I know she was very nervous initially when I joined Van Halen at 15.
Was she worried you were going to go off the rails? Or
maybe, or just,
just mom stuff?
Yeah, mom stuff.
Yeah.
But I think now she trusts me, that I've been able to prove myself as my own individual, and she is certainly as proud as can be. I mean, her social media handle is Wolfie's mom, so I think that says everything.
I follow your mother, so I'm aware of the love that a mother has for her son. I'm not trying to stay on the negative stuff because it gets boring.
There's a lot of negative stuff, so feel free.
No, I'm not. I find it boring, and I'm not saying it's boring to you when you're going through it. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I know what it's like to be on stage. You're in a great mood. You want to play, and you can feel there's this vibe out there. You know, how do you navigate that in real time? We dealt with our own version of it. Well, you're not Nirvana. Well, you're not, you're not Pearl Jam or whatever. And, as a musician, not as a person, in the moment, you got to figure out with your people how to attack that so that when you leave that stage, they go, you know what? There's something there. I wasn't expecting that. And by the way, it might make you laugh. I'm 57 years old. I still deal with it. I can feel that vibe.
Oh, yeah. I guarantee you there's at least 20% of every crowd at our show that leaves disappointed I didn't play Panama.
Good song.
Great song. Not a Mammoth song.
Exactly.
Is there a usual play eruption in any pause? Sure. But that's to be expected. People are drinking. People are being dumb.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's cool.
But again, I'm more interested in the positive side. Like, how do you adjust? Look, if you don't have a name, right? You have a name from your family. I have a name that I've built up over time. That creates an expectation, but you're working with something. If you're nobody and nobody knows who you are, and that was me at one point in my life, and you got a bar full of people drinking, you have to figure out a musical solution. It's not like, hey, be nice to me. You know what I'm saying? It's like, What is your musical solution? Is it to have a great band? Is it to write better? Like, what's your plan there?
For me, it's to have great songs that I think if you were given the album at any point, you could find at least one song that you would enjoy.
Yeah.
I listened to wide breadth.
I listened to the first album when it came out, and I was like, wow, okay.
There's something like Distance, if you like, a down-tempo sort of emotional pop song, but then there's heavy stuff like, heavy arena, rock like Don't Back Down, or, then there's solo heavy stuff like You're to Blame, and that's just talking about the first album. Or like sort of a sludgy.
But my point is the second album, I hear you growing as a musician. I hear you getting more confident. I hear you kind of spreading your wings a little bit more with what you want to say. And that's every artist that's going somewhere, that's how it should be. It's like you should get better and better.
Yeah.
So, but when you're out there in front of a live crowd, like, sorry, I can't remember the name of the song. Something about the world, blowing up the world.
Another Celebration at the End of the World.
Okay. But I watched some live clip and you were opening with that song.
Yeah.
So then I watched that and then I went back and listened to the album version. And I like that the live version was a little bit more aggressive than the album version.
We always tend to play a couple BPM faster live.
Right, but I'm saying that's on some level that's a musical thing of like, okay, I got to come out here and hit this hard.
Well, that was, I think what I like about what we've set up so far is that we have that wide breadth in musical variety to where we can sort of chameleon our way into opening for other bands. Like, for example, we've been opening for Metallica for the last 2 years. We just finished that up. That's a tough band to open for. So we found that...
Been there, done that.
Yeah. So we've found that the crowd responded most to tempo and obviously more heavier songs. So we just took all the heavy songs that we could play and all the fast songs we could play in our catalog, and just that's what we did. And it worked.
Yeah.
But hell, we could open for Taylor Swift if we wanted to. We have enough pop songs that it's like we could just play an acoustic set and there you go.
You've been through enough, I think. You're really asking for it there. Even I don't have that kind of confidence.
That's my I guess my move is to have that sort of wide breadth where you can fit anywhere. And
but don't you think that's a bit of I'm going to sound like an old guy, but your generation is different about those types of, like, my generation was very much like, you're in this category, which is why I said I wanted to interview your father.
Yeah.
Because back then it was like, Van Halen's a rock band. They're not alternative. So if you like alternative, you can't, it was the same crap.
Yeah, I guess I'm not.
Your generation seems to be more like, hey, it's all good.
Yeah, I think if it sounds, my dad would always say, if it sounds good, then it is good. Yeah. And I think that's what
the Duke Ellington quote? There's two types of music, good and bad.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah, and I think so going back to your initial question, I think having a breadth of music where you can kind of chameleon your way into other spots but just having a good band and good songs and playing them well.
Yeah.
You know, I think the biggest thing for me is, and a big criticism that I was given because nobody ever believed I was playing anything, was that I was faking and I was playing to tracks or something.
What?
Yeah. And
'Cause you play super tight live.
thank you.
I mean, and you're
very
singing.
important. Yeah, it's very important for me that we don't use tracks. The only thing we play to is a click track.
Okay.
You know,
Why do you play the click track?
it just kind of keeps it together. It's just more fun. Sometimes it's fun to not, you know.
Yeah.
There's a metal band, Meshuggah, I love very much, and sometimes they just go into a song where you don't even hear a count off, and I think that's really cool.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I don't know, it just kind of holds it together. But I, you know, that's a big debate on tracks. I personally think there shouldn't be any lead vocal tracks. There shouldn't be any background tracks. There shouldn't be any main guitar. No drums. Like for us, what you're seeing is us, and it's different. It's not the album. It's a live thing.
Yeah.
And I think what we've been doing the past 3 years is working on being the best performance kind of band that you can think. We don't have a show. The show is us. You come to see us play our songs as great as well as possible.
If you want a free suggestion, one thing that I found when I was younger is sometimes finding the right song to cover.
Mm-hmm.
It'll allow you to add a different musical layer to your set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
even Foo Fighters, you see where Grohl would do, and Taylor would come out and sing Queen or whatever. It allows you to kind of create a different scene in the movie that you're playing live without having to figure it out. And what we always did is we just do our own version of it.
Yeah, we actually did that for a little bit. We covered Them Bones.
Oh, wow,
Alice in Chains. My guitar player, my other guitar player, we have three. John has a really good singing voice, and so we were able to do those, you know.
I have a funny story for you that involves that song if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
So the Pumpkins are trying to get signed, 1990, and Columbia Records was interested in signing the band. We didn't sign with them. So I go to, you know, the Tower or wherever they were, and Donnie Einer was the president, you know, notorious, like, and I go in this office, and he's literally, not that you can see on TV, like, see where that chair is over there?
Yeah.
Okay, he's sitting that far away from me behind a desk. And for some reason, I'm all the way on the other end of the room. Right? And as I'm sitting there, he's on the phone. As I'm looking around, it's like, to Donnie, Mick and Keith, you know, autographs. You know, everywhere I look, it's like, I love you, Donnie, Stevie Wonder, you know, whatever, right? So it's totally intimidating. I was 23 or something. And he goes, who's going to produce your first record? I go, probably Butch Vig. Now, Butch Vig, at that point, had not done Nevermind.
Wow.
Butch Vig had done some demos with Nirvana, and we wanted him to produce what became our first album, Gish, which went on to be very successful. But nobody knew who Butch was. Never heard of him. He goes, what about Dave Jordan? And Dave Jordan had done Jane's Addiction.
Yeah.
Nothing shocking, stuff like that. And I go, well, people say we sound a little bit like Jane's. It's probably a bad idea. He goes, listen to this. And he cranks. And I'd never heard Alice in Chains.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, stun volume. It's like concert level, Them Bones.
Wow.
And it wasn't even out yet.
That's amazing.
So I'm like this. Right? And it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, you cover the song. It's like, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Song finishes. What do you think? I'm like, sounds pretty good.
Loud.
So is he your producer? I go, no. Like, you don't tell a guy like that no.
Yeah.
So, out.
Wow.
End of meeting. So, I blame Jerry.
Way to go, Jerry.
God bless. I'm really curious if you have a vision for where you want to go musically. And I'm not asking the nerd, like, more polyrhythms. I'm saying is there an aspiration? Because I feel you have it in you to expand your palette out. And I'm not saying it's as simple as, like, you know, the Beatles started using orchestras, but you have an aspirational arc that I feel like you've got the musical harmonic ability.
I want something new on every album. Like, I don't want every album to tread the same ground. Like, obviously there can be core mammoth
Okay, so what's
songs.
that sound like in your brain?
I think right now there are certain songs that I'm working on that have just, I don't even know how to quantify it, just a different vibe, but still is tied to the sound of Mammoth. But it just kind of makes that bubble that much bigger each time. And I think it's
But is there a set of influences that's exciting you, or?
Uh,
I'm asking because I'm really curious where you want to go.
Yeah, I'm trying to put, I mean, there are some riffs on this next album that are almost like Rage Against the Machine like.
Okay.
There's this one song that is almost Queen in a way, you know? And those are different vibes than what we've laid out before. So I think as long as there's, you know, I have some vibes on the, some ideas on a piano that I haven't really explored, and I think that'd be a fun thing to add. But overall, what I guess what I just want to do is I think rock, you know, it's no longer the golden genre as it was, but I think there's not a lot.
But it's having a weird comeback.
It is, and I want to make sure that I can do my best to.
You might be standing in a couple of years. You might be standing in the perfect spot.
I guess that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, at least hold,
I can only encourage you
in a good light.
I know you don't know me, but I can only encourage you to chase whatever you're hearing in your head.
That's
you got to trust that, because
that's one of my.
I know there's more music in you, which is why I get annoyed when people kind of do this weird, like, you know what I mean?
No,
because as a musician, and look, you're opening for Metallica.
Yeah.
James Hetfield is one of the great, like, James and Lars would not have you on there if they didn't think that you had a future.
It was an honor, man. It was.
Those are serious guys.
Yeah.
Lars really knows music, and so does James, and so does Rob Trujillo, you know what I mean? And so does Kirk. Like, they're musos.
Yeah.
You can't be in Metallica if you don't have, like, a deep love and appreciation for music. The fact that they put it in the Metallica stew, well, that's a lot of influences coming into that stew.
Yeah,
right?
it was a crazy honor to tour them for almost 2 years.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah. Right. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, they don't run a charity up there.
Yeah. I think that's a clear point where it's like, you know, people think that doors are just wide open for me to walk through and are just handed to me.
No, you grew up in this business, you know it don't work like that.
You have to sure.
How long has Mammoth been going now at this point?
We started touring in July of 2021.
But you'd made the record before, right?
I spent 2015 to 2018 making the first record, but then when my dad got sick, I kind of put everything on hold. And it wasn't until he passed in 2020 that I was like, okay, my life is completely empty, and I need something to give me purpose.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm still doing to this day.
I saw where you were talking about how he had an influence on the first record, and it makes sense to me. And then here you are on the second record. It's like, okay, well, this mentor is, you know, my pop, right? Who'd you turn to that gave you sort of a confidence, or like, is it your band? Is it your, you know what I'm saying? Who in your world, like who's your guy or girl that you go, okay, I'm going the right way?
In the absence of my father, which is a heavy absence that I'm dealing with to this day, you know, his pride in me was so large that in its absence, there's just this kind of black hole sitting there. But I have my mother, I have my wife, I have Matt, who's here with me, and I have my Uncle Patrick, my mom's brother, and my good friend and manager Tim are the, and my producer Elvis as well, are the people that kind of see through my insecurities and try and pull.
Do you think your insecurities are born of something that you were just born with and you just have to navigate it? Because if you're a sensitive person, that stuff happens.
Yeah.
Or do you think because you're in a particular situation, it's put you in a thing where you're like, I don't know how to navigate all this?
I think it's a bit of both, honestly. I think it is the pressure of the name, but it also is just I'm an emotional person who wants to do the right thing.
Yeah.
It's tough to know what that is before you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know what that feels like, you know. I can only tell you my version of it. I can only tell you that, like, at some point my life became a ghost on me, and I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I always make the joke, like, I get the guy who walks up to me in the airport and he wants to talk to me about my second album. And he's talking to me like, could you talk to the guy who wrote that? And I'm like, I'm here. Hello.
Yeah.
I wrote the second album.
Exactly.
It's like, could you talk to Bill 93, you know, I'm like, I'm here.
Yeah. It's a funny thing.
Right? I don't remember what song I took this from, so you remind me, but I like this lyric. Hey you, anything is possible. Is it from The Distance, right?
That's Mammoth. That's the first song.
Okay, sorry. Hey
First
you,
album.
thank you. Hey you, anything is possible. You're not the only one. You let them think you're unremarkable and prove them wrong. Am I right in this is somebody talking to you?
If anything, it's a little bit of both, almost like a mantra to myself,
Okay.
to a certain extent, but also, you know, I like to write lyrics from a perspective that I think anybody can take their own meaning from it.
Okay.
You know, I really don't like when there's I think there's always a definitive meaning for a song from somebody, but I don't like to paint people's opinions or thoughts on it prior. I like people to form their own opinions. Mm-hmm. And I like to write from a perspective that people can kind of...
Is that because you want them to have that experience, or is it because you like a little bit of ambiguity?
Ambiguity is nice, I think, but in the case of that song, I think it's just, there's a lot of times in my life where I've felt worthless or not able to live up to certain people's expectations that they have for me. And it's just nice to have a mantra to follow.
Yeah.
And to try in some way instill confidence, if it's possible, into yourself.
Right.
And know that you can kind of do it.
Yeah. I was curious because we were talking about you playing everything, and pretty good drummer, you know what I mean?
Thank you.
So, you know, it's a lot of talent going on here, but I am curious because, you know, my father was a musician. I don't know if you know that. Mm-hmm. So my father was a very, very harsh critic, and he didn't rate me as a good guitar player oftentimes. So trying to live up, and my dad was a really good guitar player.
Yeah.
And I have a funny story I want to tell you, but so I'm curious how your uncle rates you as a drummer.
You know what? I don't know if I've even asked him. I just know he's proud of me, mm-hmm. And that he thinks I'm good.
Yeah.
I've never really asked specifically though, but
that's funny.
I'll have to ask.
Yeah. I because again, I knew I was going to talk to you. I had this memory that I hadn't thought of for a long time. My dad was a professional musician in Chicago. Mm. I started playing strip bars when he was 17. So I was born when he was 19. Wow. So I grew up always musicians everywhere. My dad, as I like to say, was always the white guy in the African-American band. He loved funk, soul, R&B. That's the music he worshiped, blues. Yeah. So that's, you know, when I was 5 years old in the basement, they're down there getting stoned and playing and and all that stuff. But as you know, when you have a musician father, they're very opinionated. Yeah. And they definitely let you know, right? Yeah. And I'm not asking you any of those questions. I'm telling you my story. But he hated pretty much everybody on the guitar. And again, my father was a really good guitar player. Yeah. So it's not like I thought, no, you don't know what you're talking about, old man. He was really good. He could really, really play. And he liked Stevie Ray Vaughan because he liked blues. And so to him, Stevie Ray Vaughan rated. So, but there's this one moment where I was listening obsessively to Van Halen 1, and he had a turntable, and he let me play records, and he came in and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was trying to learn how to play "Ain't Talking About Love," you know, A minor. We all know the riff. Yep. You've played it 1,000 times. A little bit. And it was cool because he didn't like rock music per se, but he respected your dad as a guitar player, which meant the world to me because it was like, he wasn't doing anything like, you know. It was like, no, he's good. So he thought it was valuable, and he took the time to learn. It's the only song he ever taught me outside of House of the Rising Sun. Wow. Was Ain't Talking About Love. Because everyone always assumes because my dad was a professional guitar player that he taught me. He didn't teach me shit. Same thing. He didn't want me to play. In my case, he didn't want me to play. He did everything to keep me from playing. But when he saw that I was serious, he would occasionally sort of point and do that. Mm-hmm. And so I have this beautiful memory of being in his... My dad used to deal drugs. So up front in the house where he lived, and I lived with him, you know, I'm listening to Van Halen 1, and I said, can you help me with that? And he took the time to learn it and taught me. And then he encouraged me to listen because he said, this is a person worth listening to.
That's
It's a cool memory, right?
That's really, really cool. I think that's an important delineation that should be made about Dad, is that regardless of if you're a fan of the music or not, you have to respect his impact, at the very least on the instrument. You know, like...
It's redonkulous.
I think for some people...
To use a 90s word, you know?
Yeah, I think for some people, it's, you know, it's like, I don't like that stuff. But it's like, you can't ignore... Like, subjective opinions are rife in music.
Do you mind if I say something personal? Okay. I really, really, truly admired your father as a musician. And I was lucky enough to know him just a little bit. And when he passed away, you know, when somebody you really love and admire passes away, you almost hold your breath a little bit, right? Because what's the story? Like, how's this all going to go down, right? Is somebody going to say something stupid? Is their take not going to be my take? It's selfish as a fan, and it blew me away, the love that came from everywhere quarter. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. Because he was so loved as a musician. And I was like, that's so rare. It's like, there's only a few musicians that rate that kind of response, where you've got people from every musical genre. I'm not saying that made your loss any easier.
No.
But it was cool for me as a fan.
Yeah.
And somebody who knew him like a little bit. It was like, that's the person that I admired. And I'm glad that it felt kind of cool in a weird... It's like, let's call it the silver lining of something terrible. Mm-hmm. It was like, wow, this is sweet.
Yeah, it really, you know, we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary of his passing, and it's not any easier. And I believe Zelda Williams, Robin's daughter, said it in the best way that I could ever imagine, which is even a truckload full of roses still weigh a ton.
Okay.
And
why do you don't have to answer this if you want, but why is it still so hard for you? Do you understand the way I'm asking that?
Because there's so much that I can't share with him. He never got to see what...
I get that.
What happened with Mammoth. He never got to see me get married. Yeah. He never got to see me have kids eventually.
Yeah.
You know, and those are some tentpole moments that will always have a tinge of sadness no matter what.
I get it.
It's tough.
I lost my mom when I was 29. Sorry. Oh, thank you. But right at the peak of everything going crazy.
Yeah.
And you have those moments where you're like, she never met the grandkids. She didn't see me lose my mind in 98. You know what I mean? So I get it. I really do understand. I hope you find the peace in that.
I know he'd be proud. You know, he'd be losing it.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, grieving is such a complicated process. You know, they're still really studying it.
Yeah.
You know, and I hope that there's that moment, hopefully, in everybody's grief where it turns from a hollow hurt to a sweetness. And I hope you find that spot.
Yeah, I think I'm in that halfway period, maybe.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, I lost my pop a couple years ago, about almost 3 years ago. You know, he was a hardcore partier and totally abused himself. And we didn't always have the best relationship. So I've lost both my parents now. And like I said, it's almost 3 years, and I'm just now getting around to kind of dealing with it.
Yeah.
I spent like the first year kind of like, yeah, I'm okay. You know, we were all right. It's all good. You know, he lived as he died. He died as he lived. He wanted to go out, you know, living a dream.
Yeah.
So it's very complicated. And I think maybe that's one other part that annoys me. For as much love as your father engendered from his fans, and as much as he contributed to American culture, not only world culture. I mean, I remember being in a pool in 1979, the day Dance the Night Away came out as a single. Okay? I'm 11, 12 years old in a pool in Glendale Heights, Illinois, and it was the song of summer.
Yeah.
Like, I will forever have that sunshine on my face and going, what the hell is this? And the beautiful chorus. And,
oh, yeah.
Right? So that's part of what irritates me is you're still a person in mourning. You know what I mean? There used to be a respect in our world for like, let that person to have some time to themselves.
Social media has completely eroded that.
Oh, yeah.
And now we have generations growing up in that.
Yeah.
And so the empathy isn't even involved. And they don't even know what it was like prior. And it's a really tough thing to see.
So I don't know how people don't do the math of, hey, if I love Eddie or if I love Van Halen, how can I not extend that love and empathy to his child?
Yeah, why does it immediately turn negative?
Well, that says something about them. It doesn't say anything about you.
Of course. It's just a very interesting phenomenon.
You know, and he named you Wolfgang for a reason. You know what I mean? Last thing. When I wrote this question today, when I was preparing to interview you, and I want to give my answer, and so I hope it doesn't come off wrong because I respect you, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. You know, I'm poking around, as you do, right? It's the internet. And I come across this thread, and the thread was, would you still listen to him if his last name wasn't Van Halen? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to wade in here. And it was like, wow, this is weird. And so you can react if you want. You can just say, whatever, that's the world. My opinion is, yes, if you were named Wolfgang Johnson and you had a band called Crazy Kids, and I heard your number one song on the radio or your number one record or whatever, I think this kid has something. I don't know why people can't get that.
Yeah, it's a tough thing because we don't live in that world.
But what would you want them to? It's weird because you know and I know it's a fool's gold.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Nothing you say and nothing I say is going to change that.
I would love people to judge me on my own merits, but I think that's impossible for certain people.
Okay, so I'm sitting here as a musician, right? And I'm saying, you belong. You're one of us. You're a musician. Like me, you grew up in a musical family. The fact that my dad didn't make it doesn't change at all my relationship to my pop. My father was my hero. So I'm saying it's not fair, but I resonate with you in a particular way. I know what it was like to have my father stare at me when I was playing the guitar and think, am I living up to his expectations? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I get it, even though I don't know your circumstance.
It's a funny thing because people, there are some people who just hate me because I exist. And there's nothing I can do about the way I was the way I've grown up.
Is that because they think you have some privilege or?
Yeah, and that's certainly true to an extent, but it's completely out of my control. And I think it's funny when my dad literally achieved the American dream. He was
coming from another country, didn't even speak English.
A Dutch immigrant at 6 years old.
Yeah.
Found success beyond his wildest dreams doing what he loved and gave a better life to his offspring than he had.
Yeah.
That's the American dream.
He is the American dream. And that is the dream. That you would leave something for your children. Right?
So if he did that, then why is it like fuck me all of a sudden because my dad did that? It's completely out of my control. You know what I mean? It's a very, very weird thing because all I want to do is just play music and make music that makes people feel emotions.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the one thing I can tell you about this world is people get bored. And eventually they're going to get bored of the same story.
Yeah.
And they'll move on. They'll make up some other new story.
Sure.
Like they don't like your beard.
Yeah.
It'll be about the beard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
They'll move on.
I hope this was enjoyable for you.
This was wonderful.
Thank you. Because I think you have such a bright future. And I hope that you get to all those dancing rainbows in your head, you know, that musicians have when they're laying in bed.
Thank you. That it means the world to hear you say that.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Hope we talk again soon.
Absolutely.
On Mammoth 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll be right here.
You got it. Anytime, man.
Thank you.